Today, I plan on showing how I plant a tree. Years ago, we purchased a number of bare root fruit trees that ran around $10 a piece. The instructions that came with those trees suggested that a $10 tree requires a $50 hole. The tree I'm about to buy today is going to run around $400. So the question is, can I dig a $2,000 hole? Probably not, but I'm going to give it my best shot. In addition to selecting the type of tree to plant that's appropriate for your soil conditions and so on, you need to select the site. And keep in mind about how big that tree will be when it's at its mature height and spread, especially concerning power lines and structures and so on. You should also get a utility line locate to make sure that you don't run into any hidden underground utilities. In my case, I've had my property surveyed a number of times, and I'm out in my field, so I already know that I don't have any utilities that I need to worry about. Now that I determined where I'm going to plant my tree, I planted a flag in the center of the hole. And for my next step, I'm going to go ahead and mark the perimeter of the hole I'm about to dig using upside down paint. Now this is sort of an unnecessary step that I don't usually do, but I think it'll help showcase what I'm doing in this video. Now that I have the perimeter of my hole marked, the next step, which I consider to be probably the most important step of all, is I will water the area in real good. So to do that, I will use this rosebud sprinkler, and I'll set it in the center of the hole, and I'll let the water run for 2 or 3 hours. And then equally important, I'll let that set for 2 or 3, maybe even as long as 4 days. So the water will have a chance to percolate down, the capillary action will pull it out a bit, and the surface will dry out some, and in the end, I expect to have soft and friable, but not muddy soil. I purchased a white oak tree, otherwise known as a Quercus alba. I've been looking for one of these trees for about 20 years. They're really hard to come by in our area, even though my research would indicate it should do well here. The nursery I purchased this tree from only had 2, and the tree is actually quite a bit larger than what I had intended to purchase. It's a 2.5-inch caliper tree, closer to 2 3/4, I imagine. My preference would be to purchase something in the 1.5-inch caliper range. And the reason is that the root balls are all the same size. So the smaller caliper trees are less impacted and have an easier time getting established. So my plan was to let that water soak in for 3 or 4 days, but then of course around day 3 it started raining and we got well over 1 inch of rain, so I wound up waiting an entire week. So in the meantime the grass grew quite a bit, but you know, that's just the way it goes. So I'm going to give this a shot today. I think the soil is probably about where I want it to be. In the meantime, the field grass grew quite a bit, and the upside down paint that I placed to mark the periphery of the hole is not as self-evident. So the first step in actually digging the hole is to remove the sod, or in my case just the field grass, just to get it away. It'll make it a lot easier to dig the hole ultimately, and then you won't have a lot of extra fiber that you're fighting when you're trying to put the dirt back in the hole. And then I'll use that grass to pack around the dam that I will build around the hole. So as I anticipated, the moisture content of the soil is about what I expected. It's not too muddy, it's not sticky, yet it's reasonably friable. Now I suspect as I dig deeper, the consistency will be approximately the same. Given the conditions I now have for the soil in the hole, I could clear out this hole just using my shovel. But I'm going to cheat a bit. I'm going to use my tractor with a postal digger and a 12-inch auger to break up the soil around the periphery to a depth of about 3 feet, and in the center to a depth of about 2 feet to support the root ball. And then I'll come back and scoop out the soil with my shovel. So I did the periphery down to about, well, the depth of the auger completely. So I'm down to about a depth of 3 feet right around the ring that you see there. So now I have to drill the center, but I don't want to drill it as deep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and scoop off the loose soil on top so that I can see what I have left to work with, so I can locate the holes properly. I'll measure the root ball, subtract, about 2 inches or so, and then measure up against the auger, to get a kind of a reference for how deep I should go in the center. As you recall, I got to leave a shelf, kind of an upside down cone is what I'm ultimately going to have, so that the root ball has something to perch on. So that's it for the fun part. Unfortunately, I now have to switch over to a trusty shovel and do the rest manually. So I completed digging out my hole, and it's a handsome hole if I say so myself. Now, based on the depth of the periphery from the pole hole digger, I drilled down about 3 feet all the way around the edge, but I didn't quite dig all the way down to the bottom of what the pole hole digger got to. I left a pedestal in the center of the hole to support the root ball, and I tried to leave that soil undisturbed. Now, it may seem like the next step is to put the tree in the center of the hole, but then I'll have a tree in my way, and I got a pedestal that, could fall apart on me if I'm not careful. So what I'm going to do next, actually, is I'm going to backfill the hole up until I get at least as tall as the pedestal is. Now notice, I left some gaps in my pile, so that's so I can string a straight edge across the hole, so I can measure down to my pedestal. So currently I got about 3 additional inches of height on the pedestal based on the measurement of my root ball. But I'll get the tree in there, and then I'll run my straight edge across again, and I'll adjust accordingly. The other reason I left these gaps between the pile is to make it easier to actually, get the tree in the hole. This would be particularly useful if you're having a tree delivered, or if you're having to hump this tree in the hole manually, then you can just slide it over to the edge of the hole. And if you fill the hole for the most part, like I'm about to, then two guys ought to be able to get that tree rolled over, into the center of your hole. So my soil is all busted up nice like I had hoped. I'll start backfilling the hole with the soil that was closer to the surface. And as I'm going, I will also add in some aged wood chips and some mulch, and then maybe a bag or so of compost. And I'll just kind of layer that in as I go. So at this point, I think my hole is ready to accept this tree. So the next step is to pull the tree off my trailer and set it next to the hole. And for that I will use my boom pole and the 3-point hitch of my tractor. So I'll need to remove the side of the trailer and the tarp from the root ball, and then I will actually wrap a chain around the center of the root ball, which I will attach using some tie wire just so it doesn't slide off and fall down. Back my tractor up, take a second chain through the lift eye on the boom pole, and then secure the upper part of the tree, the trunk, to the boom pole to keep the tree from flopping around. I will then move the tree over to the hole and set it down on the ground, because I'll need to readjust the length of the chains in order to get it from the ground down into the hole. I have my tree now placed in the center of the hole, and it's supported by the pedestal that I had left. So it's really secure. It's not going to sink, in other words. I have my straight edge placed across more or less the diameter of the hole, level with the surrounding soil. And the top of the root ball is about 3 or 4 inches higher than the surrounding soil. Now, based on information that I've gleaned over the years, you want to plant a tree a little bit out of the ground, an inch or two. The top of the root ball shouldn't really be flush or lower than the surrounding ground, certainly. So I need to lower this root ball another, couple of inches. And I can do that by just tilting the tree over and chipping away at the pedestal. But before I do that, I'm going to remove the wire basket and the burlap. Now this step can be a bit controversial. I've gotten into a bit of a, I don't know if you'd call it an argument, but years ago we've actually had trees planted for us. I dug the hole and everything, but then we had the nurseries come out and actually put the tree in the ground. And they always fought me on removing the basket. I guess they're worried the root ball is going to fall apart. But it's been my experience that the soil around these root balls and the root structure and stuff is all nice and tight. And even still, I'm going to be packing the dirt around it pretty quick. Okay, I suspect that root ball is pretty solid. So I'm going to go ahead and just knock a little bit off of here. I'll make a little bit of a dish. Yeah. Like that. Yeah. Okay, so nice and easy. Okay. After I removed the burlap and stood the tree back up, it turned out that the height was about perfect, as evidenced by my straight edge placed across the opening. So then my wife came out and helped me site the tree to get it plumb. So all I had to do was pack some clay around in a few places. It was only off by a couple of degrees maybe. So now the tree is pretty solidly placed and it's ready to be planted. So I'll do what I did before using some organic material. This time I'll be using some homegrown compost and then adding alternating between layers of soil and compost as I work my way up. So as I'm adding layers of soil back into the hole, I go back and I tamp down each of the layers, 3 inches or so at a time, just to recompact the soil. I mean, I went through a lot of trouble to loosen it all up and basically add airspace, but you don't want a ton of space because you don't want that soil to really sink in as you water in. But you do want some airspace. You want the soil to be permeable. I have a bag of mushroom compost that I'll work into the very top. Once that's all done, then I just need to build a dam around the periphery to hold the water in. Pound in some T-posts. And add the straps. Now for the first season, from now until next spring, I'll have those straps placed pretty tight because this is a pretty good sized tree and root balls are conical. So the ground could shift, and with winds and things, it's possible that whole root ball could rotate. So that's what the straps will be for. And then next spring, I'll actually loosen those up a bit so they'll have a bit of a sag in them, just in case we get some really wicked winds. And 2 years from now, I'll go ahead and remove the straps and the T-posts entirely. I completed planting my tree. I have the dam all installed and its soil all firmed up so it'll hold back some water. I got the T-posts pounded into the ground and the straps installed and snugged up to keep the tree vertical, at least through this first growing season. And I just started watering this tree for the first time. If you like this video, please give me a like below and consider subscribing to my channel for more videos of how to do things yourself. And if you do, you get to see me in the next video.